All right, let's dive in. Today, we're going to be looking at wealth and relationships and how those two things, well, how they kind of play out in the public eye.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, that's for sure. We've got a really interesting mix here. Some hot gossip from social media
Oh, yeah.
and some deep thoughts from a guy who calls himself the area grandfather.
Right. Yeah, and his piece, it's called The Illusion of Wealth and the Reality of Marriage. It really got me thinking about what really matters.
Yeah.
Especially when we're like surrounded by all these images of luxury and perfect relationships, online.
Totally. It's all about that contrast between what we see and what's really going on. And I guess we should start with the whole Regina Daniels thing, right? She's the young actress who she took her husband's name off of all her socials and deleted photos and even posted some kind of cryptic videos.
And the internet just exploded. I mean, especially with that video of her like walking toward a Ferrari, singing about crying in $100 bills. People were like all over the place. Some people thought it was, I don't know, aspirational.
Yeah.
And others were like, girl, read the room. It really sparked a debate about values, don't you think?
Absolutely. It gets to the core of what the area grandfather is saying about money and marriage. He's saying basically money and luxury, they don't sustain a marriage. And then he brings up these high-profile divorces like Bill and Melinda Gates, Tiger Woods, to kind of prove his point.
It's a good point. I mean, you would think if you had all that money, relationship problems would be the last thing.
Right. But maybe all that money, maybe it makes things worse or even creates new problems. Maybe it's hard to know if people love you or for your, your stuff.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely a complicated situation.
Yeah, it's complicated.
And the area grandfather, he doesn't shy away from that. He talks about polygamy too, which, well, that's a big part of this whole story because Regina Daniels' husband, he has other wives.
Right.
He says polygamy to a large extent involves a narcissistic approach to life.
Wow. That's a big statement. And it makes you wonder about, why people choose those kinds of relationships. Is it all about ego? Or is there something else going on? Are all the partners really truly considered?
He also makes a point about companionship in a polygamous relationship. He says, a woman does not marry television, does not marry cars, does not marry containers, does not marry money. A woman marries her man, and you will need companionship. Companionship, too, is a company, while 6 is a large crowd.
Yeah, that makes you think about how hard it must be to, keep that intimacy and connection when you're in a relationship with multiple partners.
Yeah.
Can everyone's needs really be met in that kind of situation?
I don't know. And then there's this quote about satisfying meals and volleyball teams. He says, it is easy to know the meal that will satisfy you. You can G it with your eyes, 5 women before you in a volleyball team, you don't hold on to the ball for too long. I'll admit, I had to read that one a couple of times.
It's an interesting analogy. I think what he's getting at is how difficult it is to stay interested,
Yeah.
in any relationship, not just polygamous ones. If you have a lot of options, maybe it makes it harder to really appreciate what you have.
I could see that. It's kind of like that saying, familiarity breeds contempt.
Right.
Maybe too much choice makes it hard to be happy with what you've got.
Exactly. And then bringing it back to Regina Daniels, the area grandfather, says, what happened in Morocco will happen in Nigeria, so when you get addicted to a level of comfort, it's difficult to run away.
Mm-hmm.
It almost sounds like he's seen this before.
Yeah, like a pattern. It really does make you think about how hard it must be to leave a relationship, especially when there's so much money and status involved. Do you think that would make it easier or harder to walk away?
I think it would depend, on the person and their values. For some people, the money and the social status might be more important than the emotional cost. But for other people, they might prioritize genuine connection and personal happiness above all else.
Yeah. And it's almost like the area grandfather is speaking directly to young women who might be in similar situations. It's like he's saying, hey, don't be fooled by all the bling. Real happiness comes from something deeper.
Yeah, it's almost a cautionary tale. He even mentions another woman named CH, who there were rumors that she had a child with Regina's husband.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Which just adds another layer to this already complicated story.
Right. I mean, even though those rumors were later denied, it definitely got people talking. And it sounds like the area grandfather is worried about young women being taken advantage of, women who might be drawn to wealth and power.
He uses some pretty strong language, calling it mutually exploitative. He suggests that, the young woman might be looking for financial security, a future for her kids, while the older man might be looking for, I don't know, youth validation.
Yeah. It's a perspective that really makes you think about those kinds of relationships and who holds the power, right? But what I thought was interesting is how he also talks about the woman's value. He even says that his own wife deserves, husband support for putting up with him.
There's definitely some humor in there, but underneath that, there's a serious message about equality and respect in relationships, no matter how much money is involved.
For sure. And it's interesting how in the middle of all the drama and speculation about Regina Daniels, he brings up King Lear. I thought that was kind of out of left field.
Yeah, I know. It's a bold comparison. He connects Regina's situation to the story of King Lear, who, well, he divided his kingdom among his daughters based on how much they, flattered him.
And then King Lear ends up betrayed and abandoned by his daughters. Is he saying that's what's going to happen to Regina Daniels?
Not necessarily. I think he's using it as a warning, to show how things can go wrong in relationships where there's a big age gap and a power imbalance, especially when there's a lot of money involved. He's saying that those dynamics can lead to manipulation and people having hidden agendas.
That makes sense. So are those kinds of relationships, are they just doomed from the start?
Well,
or can they work if there's real love and respect? What do you think?
That's a good question, and I think it's something we'll keep exploring as we go deeper into the area grandfather's ideas. He talks about relationships in a lot of different ways, highlighting both the excitement of new experiences and the possibility of a deep, lasting commitment.
It's like he's saying there's this whole world of extravagance and temptation, but in the end, what matters is real connection, respect, and finding your own peace.
Exactly. He's telling us to think about what's really important and to choose our battles carefully, because ultimately it's about finding that balance between what's on the outside and what's on the inside, between material wealth and how we feel about ourselves. And that's something that matters to everyone, right? Whether we're dealing with relationships or social media or just life in general. Totally.
And I think that's a great place to take a break. So when we come back, we'll dive deeper into some of the bigger ideas that have come up, like the illusion of wealth, how complicated relationships are these days, and that gap between how things look on social media and how they really are.
It's interesting how the area grandfather talks about marriage. He almost makes it sound like a sacred thing.
Yeah.
Like he says marriage involves consecration. That's a pretty serious word, right? Like it's not just about, being infatuated with someone.
Right. It's about like real dedication, real commitment.
Exactly. And he's definitely not a fan of adultery.
Yeah, no kidding. Dirtying, expensive, betrayal. It doesn't hold back.
Nope. He's very clear about fidelity being like the foundation of a good marriage.
Yeah, for sure. But it's interesting how he's like weaving these traditional values into this very modern, very public situation, right? I mean, Regina Daniels' marriage is, well, it's unconventional to say the least, and it's constantly under a microscope.
Right. And it makes you wonder how those traditional values hold up in today's world, with all the wealth and fame and the pressure of social media.
Yeah. Does all that make it harder to have a strong, lasting relationship?
I think it could. I mean, we see it all the time, right?
Yeah. And speaking of that, the area grandfather uses this really interesting metaphor. He compares marriage to a car with a delicate brain box.
Yeah.
He says that if you mess with the specifications or ignore the owner's manual, you're basically gonna break down.
I love that. It's like you wouldn't just, start messing around with the car engine if you didn't know what you were doing, right?
Right. It's the same with the relationship.
Exactly. You have to understand how it works. You have to put in the work to understand your partner, to understand yourself, and to figure out what makes the relationship tick.
So true. It's like anything else that's complex. You'd have to pay attention. You have to learn. You have to be willing to adapt.
Absolutely. You can't just expect it to run smoothly on its own.
No way.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because the area grandfather, he actually thinks there's a chance that Regina Daniels and her husband could get back together.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He says the man that was able to convince you to marry you at a certain age is always capable of convincing you to come back, especially when he is rich, powerful, and he has nothing to lose.
That's an interesting take. It kind of suggests that maybe we don't have the whole picture.
Right. Like maybe there's more going on behind the scenes.
Exactly. I mean, we're only seeing what they choose to share on social media, right? And honestly, who knows what's really happening in their private lives?
It makes you think about how tough it must be to live your life in the spotlight. Every post, every comment, every little thing you do, it's out there for everyone to judge.
Yeah, I can't imagine. It's got to be hard enough to deal with relationship problems without having the whole world watching.
No kidding. And I think the Airy grandfather, he brings a really unique perspective to all of this. He's got this blend of old school wisdom and this really sharp take on modern life.
He does, and he's not afraid to speak his mind, even if it's, not what everyone wants to hear.
Yeah, he's definitely got his own voice. And even though he's talking about a very specific situation, his message about putting your own peace of mind first, it really applies to everyone.
I think so too. It's a universal truth. It doesn't matter if you're rich or famous or just a regular person.
Exactly. True happiness doesn't come from having a lot of money or followers or anything like that. It comes from within.
And that's what the area grandfather's trying to tell us. He's saying, in your vanity, let your peace of mind come first. It's a really simple message, but it's so important.
Absolutely. And it's especially relevant today, with all the pressure we feel from social media to be perfect and successful.
Totally. It's easy to get caught up in comparing ourselves to others and feeling like we're not good enough.
Yeah, but the area grandfather he's reminding us that real wealth isn't about money or fame. It's about the quality of our experiences, the strength of our relationships, and finding that peace within ourselves.
And he's also reminding us that we have a choice. We can chase after external validation and material things, or we can focus on building genuine connections and taking care of our own well-being.
It's about defining success for ourselves on our own terms.
Exactly. And not letting society tell us what it should look like.
Right. And, it's fascinating how the Airy grandfather uses Regina Daniels' situation to illustrate all of this. It's like he's saying, look, even in a world of wealth and privilege, true happiness still comes from within.
Yeah, it's a powerful message. And I think it's one that we all need to hear.
It's amazing, right? Like we started with this whole Regina Daniels thing, and now we're talking about like the meaning of life.
Yeah, I know. It's like we zoomed out and now we're looking at this bigger picture of, what really matters. Wealth, relationships, happiness. It's stuff that everyone thinks about.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the area grandfather, he gives us a really interesting way to think about all of this. He's got this old school wisdom, but he's also talking about like what's happening right now.
Totally. He's not afraid to challenge us, to make us think differently. And one of the things I really took away from his writing is this idea that real wealth, it's not about, how much money you have.
It's not about the stuff. Right.
Right. It's about like inner peace. It's about having good relationships, living a life that feels true to who you are.
I love that. It's so easy to forget that, especially with like social media and everything. It's like everyone's trying to show off how perfect their life is, how much they have.
It's true. And it's easy to start comparing yourself, to start feeling like you're not good enough.
Totally. But the area grandfather, he's like, hold on a second. Real happiness, it comes from within.
It does. It's about appreciating what you have, being grateful, not always wanting more.
Yeah. And that's where that idea of putting your peace of mind first comes in, right? Like realizing that how you feel about yourself, that's the most important thing.
It is. It's about setting boundaries, making choices that make you feel good, letting go of the things that drain you or make you compromise your values.
Yeah. And realizing that you have a choice. You can chase after all the external stuff, the validation, the possessions, or you can focus on what's inside, building real connections, taking care of yourself.
And that's what it means to define success on your own terms, not by what society tells you.
Exactly. And it's funny how Airy grandfather, he uses Regina Daniels to show all of this, right? Like he's saying, look, even in a world of money and fame, you still have to find happiness within yourself.
It's such a powerful message because it's true for everyone. Money and fame, they don't automatically make you happy.
Nope. It's about the people you surround yourself with, the way you feel about yourself, and the choices you make every day.
Exactly. And I think that's a great place to wrap up our deep dive for today. We've talked about a lot of interesting stuff, from, celebrity drama to some really deep wisdom from the area grandfather.
We have. And we hope you've enjoyed it, that maybe you've learned something new or just have something to think about.
And as always, we encourage you to keep exploring these ideas, talk to people, read different perspectives, because that's how we grow, right? That's how we learn and make our lives richer.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So until our next deep dive, keep questioning, keep searching, keep diving deep into everything life has to offer.